Today's guest, I actually met him back during the 2022 election cycle, right here in Bloomington, and he's an author, and it was such a privilege to meet you back then. Deeply compassionate advocate. Welcome back to the Conservative Cat Show, where we claw through the noise and we speak truth, and we do it boldly, and we keep it real: faith, family, and freedom. And today's guest, I actually met him back during the 2022 election cycle, right here in Bloomington, and he was running for District 10 in McLean County, which feels like forever ago. Ross Webb ended up taking that baton, but he entered the race. His name's William Holditch, and he's an author, and it was such a privilege to meet you back then. Deeply compassionate advocate and a great candidate, but you've continued your hard work long after campaign signs kind of went down, and you've created this book, and it specifically helps adult children advocate for their aging parents and loved ones. And folks, this is something that every single one of us is going to go through sometime, at one point in our lives. And William, I wanted to have you on to talk about your book a little bit, but also, I stumbled upon this social media post, and, it's been really on my heart. And I was like, I got to really reach out to William. There are a lot of people out there who don't want to care for their parents, or even go as far as to be estranged from your parents. It's a cultural trend, but there's an opposite side to this. I think that there's two extremes, right? So you've got those maybe Gen Xers, maybe millennials. There's this growing trend in culture where, and people don't want to talk about it, where adult children are cutting off their parents for no apparent reason. And I'm not talking about abusive relationships or dangerous relationships. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about cutting parents off. According to research, a vast majority of estrangements between parents and adult children are actually initiated by the child, not the parent. And, that's happening. But there's also this other side that I don't think we get to see, because we do see this cultural trend that there are adult children, and they're not disposing these relationships and tossing them aside, but rather they're seeking help. And I think your book does that, William. So tell me a little bit about that, why you wrote the book.
Well, so the book comes from really two major events in my life. The first being the death of my mother in 2017, and how we got completely caught off guard. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have any information. We were sitting there in hospice, and the next thing we know, we're like, do we have funeral plans for my mother? And the answer was no, we didn't. So we stopped hospice to do funeral plans in the middle of doing hospice. So it was very chaotic. And then a number of years later, my father had a heart attack, and I was talking to my sister about what we knew about Dad. And the answer was we really didn't know anything. I mean, we knew he was a VA. We thought he might have a pension. We thought this, but we really didn't know. So I sat down that night and wrote out 168 pages of questions that I thought were important to know. Everything from personal information, medical information, and financial information. And then took all of that brainstorming and kind of put it together in a workbook, a fill in the blank workbook, where you sit down with your parent and you just start filling out the information.
Wow. That's well, and it's incredibly helpful. And, I can't help but feel, to recite this, like, hey, the Bible tells us to honor thy mother and father, right? And I'm sorry to hear about your parents. And, it's truly a very difficult thing to see. I mean, I didn't lose my father during COVID-19, but a lot of my listeners know that he came very, very close. And just even being close like that, and I don't know anything about my dad. He's kind of like one of those silent types.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe boomers are kind of like that, where they don't disclose a lot of personal information about themselves. I don't know what that is, but there's like this divide, I think, between generations. Now, you could go an extreme and go completely estranged, but maybe a way we can reconcile or even build a relationship with our parents, or for these generations to build a relationship with their parents, is through your book, coming up with these questions, or you having coming up with these questions. You've kind of provided a one-stop shop for someone to get to know mom and dad.
And it's even more important than getting just to know mom and dad. What it is when you're standing in that hospital room and the doctors and nurses and case managers start asking you questions about medical history and drug allergies and financial responsibilities and all of those things that will get asked to you if you end up in that situation. These are things that you're going to have to know, and you're either going to learn them through my workbook and have that information when you need it, or when you get there, then you're going to have to start playing detective and try to figure that information out. At some point, you still will need it. So it's better to start with a prepared start prepared, and instead of playing catch up.
Yeah, 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 and, I think about Illinois. I don't know if you heard about their assisted physician suicide, uh, bill, that they introduced where, "Hey, if you feel like needing assisted suicide," I mean, they called it medical aid in dying, but, I mean, we're living in a period of time right now where if you don't know these decisions, somebody might make the decision for them or encourage them or coax them into making a decision that they wouldn't necessarily want to make. So I think that it's really important that people get your workbook. Where is it available, William?
So it's available on Amazon. It's Strategic Planning for the Golden Years. It is a fill in the blank workbook. So it's not something you're going to sit down and do over one Sunday dinner. It is multiple days of meetings, of sit down dinners, because it's intensive. It goes through all sorts of stuff that most people don't even think of, like a big one: Facebook passwords and Google passwords and bank passwords and those kinds of things that most people don't even think of that they need.
Yeah.
So and then it goes through your medical history of your parent. Like your dad. Your dad's probably like my dad. I have no idea what my dad's blood type is, what his medical history is, what surgeries he's had. I know he served in Vietnam. I don't know if he has any combat related injuries,
Mhm.
that kind of stuff. So, I mean, those things are those things that are going to need to know. Um, does your dad have VA benefits? I have no idea if my dad has VA benefits. And does he? He should, but has he done the paperwork? And
Mhm.
those are the problems. So it's all about the win right now, because and this is going to sound really bad, but there's 100 million people in the next 20 years between the silent generation and the baby boomers that are going to go through end of life processes. And Gen Xers and millennials are going to be the ones that are going to have to help them through it.
Mhm.
And so just be aware, it may not be you, it may be your spouse, it may be a cousin, it may be your brother or sister. Somebody in your family is going to get affected by this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that maybe because of the rise of social media and technology, perhaps like these Gen Xers, maybe millennials more so, they've been so distracted, maybe, or like not really thinking of all of these modern day problems like the Facebook password and things like that. Um,
Well,
and
and that's the problem with most people. Like I'm 50, in my early 50s, and I'm busy raising kids, and I'm busy working, and I'm busy doing this. I'm not thinking about my dad. He's great. I talk to my dad every couple of days, but I'm not thinking, oh my God, dad's going to have a stroke, and the next thing I know, I'm going to have to take care of him too, or get diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia.
Mhm.
And most people, it's not even something they're thinking about. And so I kind of jokingly tell people, if you remember when you were 14 years old and your mom and dad set you down and had the conversation with you about the birds and the bees, well, now you're 54 years old and you have to sit down and have the conversation with your parents that at some point they are no longer going to be able to advocate for themselves, and you're going to be the one that advocates for them. And you're not trying to take over their life. All you want to do is collect the information so that they can get the care that they've paid for, that they've earned, and they deserve. And
Mhm.
that's the goal of this.
Yeah, because we love our mom and dads. That's right. And we honor our fathers and our mothers, and
Yes.
they deserve the best. And your book is going to help you do that. So again, one more time, William, tell us where we can get the book.
It's on Amazon, and it's Strategic Planning for the Golden Years by William Holditch.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, William, for joining me here on the program.
Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate it.